think back to your own education for a second. Put yourself right back in that cramped desk under those awful fluorescent lights.
Oh, yeah. I can picture it perfectly.
Right. We spent over a decade being explicitly taught what to think. We're handed geometry, foreign languages, biology, the dates of historical battles.
Exactly. We memorize the inputs.
Yeah, but are we ever actually taught how to get things done? I mean, how to take an abstract idea floating around in your head, organize it, and wrestle it into a physical reality in the real world?
It's honestly the glaring blind spot of the entire system.
It really is.
We've produced generations of people who possess this immense database of knowledge, but they completely lack the internal mechanism to apply any of it when they're confronted with an unstructured problem.
The knowledge is there, but the agency is just missing. And a listener recently sent in a fascinating stack of sources that completely deconstructs this exact problem.
Yeah, the materials are all from an author named Christo Becker.
Right. We've got an essay on homeschooling, a parent and facilitator guide, some pretty intricate visual diagrams, and excerpts from a children's story called Diamond Kids.
But, don't let the children's book fool you.
Oh, absolutely not. The mission of this deep dive is to explore a radical shift from traditional outcome-based learning to what Becker calls process thinking.
And we're going to unpack how the diamond process cycle fundamentally rewires a human being.
Yeah, whether you are 8 years old or running a corporate division, it shifts you from a passive consumer of information into a highly adaptable creator.
Because this shift is no longer just a nice-to-have philosophical idea, right?
Yeah.
It's a basic survival skill.
Oh, for sure.
The environment we're preparing people for has completely transformed, yet our educational framework is still operating on an industrial-era operating system.
Okay, let's unpack this. The homeschooling essay points out a dangerous assumption we make. We assume kids will just naturally absorb traits like responsibility, strategic planning, and teamwork simply by existing in the world.
Which is wild, because that doesn't happen by osmosis.
It really doesn't. Think of traditional education like handing someone a massive, fully stocked pantry. You give them all the raw ingredients.
Right?
Here is your flour, which is mathematics. Here is your sugar, that's literature. Here are some eggs, that's history.
But you never actually teach them the process of how to turn on a stove, mix the ingredients, and cook a meal.
Exactly. We just expect them to figure out how to bake a cake because they've been staring at a pantry for 12 years.
To take that analogy further, if you just stare at the pantry, eventually you starve.
Wow, yeah. That's bleak, but true.
The reason the system operates this way is rooted in something the Facilitator guide calls the pyramid reflex.
The pyramid reflex?
Yeah. For the last century or more, we lived in a rigidly hierarchical society. Life moved slower. It was heavily siloed.
So the goal of learning was simply to follow instructions to prepare for employment inside a massive corporate or industrial pyramid.
Precisely. You were a specialized cog in a machine, so you only needed to know everything about your specific ingredient. You didn't need to know how to bake the whole cake.
The managers at the top of the pyramid did the thinking, and you just executed your tiny piece of the plan.
Exactly. The pyramid reflex is that deeply ingrained instinct to control, direct, and micromanage from the top down.
But today
we live in a hyper-fast, highly decentralized world. It demands what Becker calls diamond thinking.
Diamond thinking.
Right? It's a model based on shared responsibility, dynamic adaptability, and, learning through the friction of actually doing the work.
And the engine of this diamond thinking is an 8-step cycle. The sources include this fascinating visual diagram of an octagon.
Yeah, I love that diagram.
The steps are, let me read them here. Task, plan, get resources, do, assess, reflect, lessons, and character.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you and I and everyone listening use this exact cycle every single day, usually completely unconsciously.
Wait, really? Every day?
Oh, absolutely. Consider something as mundane as making your morning cup of coffee.
Okay.
The task is established.
Yeah.
You want coffee. The plan is formulated.
Okay.
You need your favorite mug, the kettle, filtered water, and the coffee beans.
Right.
Getting resources. You physically pull those items from the cupboards.
Yeah.
You brew it. Assess.
Yeah.
You take that first sip. Is it good?
Oh, I see where this is going.
Reflect. Maybe it's a bit too bitter today.
Mm-hmm.
Lessons. Tomorrow, you will adjust the ratio and add slightly less coffee grounds.
And finally, character. Through the continuous repetition of this loop, you internalize the process and become someone who consistently brews a great cup of coffee.
Exactly. It moves from a conscious effort to an embedded capability.
You build a habit. But taking that abstract analytical adult concept and teaching it to a child without boring them to tears is a monumental challenge.
Oh, it's nearly impossible if you just lecture them.
Which is why Becker doesn't use a dry lecture. He uses narrative.
The Diamond Kid's story serves as a Trojan horse. It takes this invisible psychological process and makes it visible and tangible.
We meet 4 siblings. Rook, who is the slightly cynical, analytical older brother.
Iona, the organized, operational one.
Fleur, the hyperactive visionary who wants everything immediately.
And Fernia, the youngest, who is deeply observant.
Right, and they are stuck at home on a school holiday, incredibly bored. Fleur is vibrating with energy and just wants to do stuff.
So they sit down and draft this wildly misspelled list of goals.
Yeah, they write down things like bake cake, meaning bake a cake, and vegetable patch for vegetable patch.
It's so cute. But eventually they narrow it down to one massive, ambitious goal. They want to go to the zoo.
And here the story introduces a brilliant mental model they call the toothbrush plan.
Yes, this is such a great concept.
This might be my favorite part of the entire stack of sources. Rook, the analytical brother, realizes that achieving the seemingly impossible goal of funding a zoo trip is fundamentally the exact same process as brushing his teeth.
Exactly. He didn't just magically manifest clean teeth in the morning.
No. He had a task. Clean teeth. A plan? Brush them, he had to get resources. Toothpaste, a brush, a cup of water. And then he had to implement it.
It completely demystifies the mechanics of achievement.
It really does.
When people, especially children, look at a massive goal, they often assume reaching it requires luck or genius or someone handing them the answer.
Right, like it's magic.
But the toothbrush plan strips away the illusion of luck. It proves that moving from point A to point B is just a sequence of actionable, logical steps.
But obviously getting to the zoo requires a slightly more complex sequence than brushing teeth.
Just a little bit, yeah.
The kids sit down to crunch the numbers. They factor in the taxi ride, the entrance fee, a wimpy lunch, candy floss, a tractor ride, and a detour to the reptile park.
And the total comes to exactly $218.
Which introduces the constraint. And
Yep.
constraint is the catalyst for all process thinking.
Yes. They have a $218 goal, but they only have one single buck to their name.
Just Fernia's solitary coin.
So they have to hustle.
And what follows is a masterclass in escalating value creation. They decide to sell lemonade to passing pedestrians.
But they don't have lemons.
Right, and they don't give up and ask their parents to buy lemons.
Instead, they march up to the intimidating old man on the corner who has a lemon tree in his yard.
Oh, that guy. Yeah. They negotiate a trade. They can pick his lemons, provided they bring him one fresh glass of lemonade for every trip they make.
That's brilliant. They hit the street, sell the lemonade for $1 a glass, and end the afternoon with $16.
In corporate terms, they just secured their seed capital for the next phase of development.
Exactly. And they immediately reinvest it.
They take that $16 to the local shop and buy self-raising flour and butter. They're going to bake scones.
They go back to the old man, negotiate access to his oven at 180 degrees Celsius, and pay him for the energy cost with a freshly baked scone.
It's an impeccable example of bootstrapping. I mean, they identify a market need, leverage incredibly limited resources, negotiate for infrastructure they don't own, and compound their initial revenue.
It really is.
But here's where it gets really interesting. It's easy to read this and think, oh, it's a cute, magical success story where everything goes right.
Oh, but it doesn't.
Not at all. On the second batch of scones, they make a massive error. They accidentally dump salt into the dough instead of sugar.
Oh, no.
Fernia takes a bite and spits it out. It's awful. The jam they have is almost entirely gone. They're nowhere near their $218 goal, and their product is seemingly ruined.
See, if they were operating under the traditional outcome-based pyramid model, this moment is categorized strictly as a failure.
Right. Game over.
The product is defective, the grade is an F, the project is over.
Yeah.
But within the diamond process cycle, an error is stripped of its emotional baggage. It isn't a failure, it is merely data.
I love that. Merely data.
It's the assess phase, returning a negative result, which simply means you have to iterate.
So Rook looks at the salty scones and asks a beautifully simple question. What is the opposite of salt? Sugar. So they adapt. They take the tiny bit of jam they have left, spread it on, and heavily sprinkle raw sugar directly on top of the jam to chemically balance out the salty dough.
That is so smart.
They take this new adapted product to the streets, completely sell out, and finish the day with $300.
Wow.
They crush their $218 target and have profit left over to start their vegetable patch project.
The synthesis of what happens here is profound. When Thursday arrives and they finally walk through the gates of the zoo, they aren't just going to look at primates and cold-blooded reptiles.
No, they have fundamentally learned how the mechanics of the real world operate.
They learn that acquiring resources requires creativity. Sustained effort requires teamwork.
And teamwork requires radical adaptation when reality inevitably throws a salty batch of dough your way.
Exactly. They didn't just earn a trip, they earned agency.
And Becker maps this exact psychological dynamic onto a visual diagram in our sources.
Right, the diamond.
Yeah, it's a literal diamond shape, and the four corners of the diamond correspond to the four kids and their distinct personalities.
Because the children in the story aren't just characters. They are archetypes representing the different cognitive stages of the process cycle.
Let's look at the breakdown. At the top apex of the diamond, you have Fleur,
Okay.
right? She represents task and plan. She is the spark of initiation. She's the one waking everyone up, vibrating with energy, demanding they do stuff.
She drafts the initial crazy list of goals.
Exactly. Then moving to the right point of the diamond, you have Iona.
She represents develop and do. She is the operator.
Right. She takes Fleur's chaotic, visionary energy and grounds it in reality.
She organizes the misspelled list. She procures the flour and butter. She physically manages the baking process. She is the engine of execution.
Down at the bottom point of the diamond, we find Rook. He represents assess and reflect.
He is the analyst.
Yeah, he doesn't get swept up in the emotion. He evaluates reality. He's the one doing the hard math, calculating the $218 requirement, auditing the daily profits, and troubleshooting the chemical problem of the salty scones.
And finally, on the left point of the diamond is Fernia, the youngest sibling.
The observant one.
Right. She represents lessons and character. She is the synthesizer.
She is the one who internalizes the external actions.
Throughout the story, she talks about the deep feeling of belonging to the family unit. Or she has an epiphany about how seeds work when they cut open a tomato. She extracts the underlying meaning from the raw events.
What's fascinating here is that Christa Becker explicitly states that these four kids don't just exist in a fictional story.
No, they exist inside every single adult listening to this deep dive.
Becoming a fully realized, capable human being means intentionally balancing these four internal archetypes.
Think about the implications of that for a moment. What happens to an adult who has far too much Fleur energy?
They are purely visionary.
Right. They start 50 different projects, launch 10 different business ideas, but lack the Iona execution to finish a single one.
Or what about the corporate middle manager who is entirely dominated by Rook energy?
Oh, they fall into permanent analysis paralysis.
Yeah,
They obsessively assess, reflect, and look at spreadsheets, but they never actually launch the product because they are terrified of the do phase.
The diamond cycle requires all four corners to function. You need the visionary spark, the operational drive, the analytical reflection, and the soulful internalization to actually complete a cycle and build character.
Absolutely.
This brings us to the Facilitator Guide, which outlines the role of the adult. It's easy to see how this works in a controlled story, but for the parents, uncles, or managers listening who actually have to foster this environment, how do we do it?
Well, the guide stresses that the adult's primary job is to focus entirely on the process, not the outcome.
But I have to push back on this. Speaking as an adult with a busy schedule, isn't it significantly faster and easier to just pull out my wallet and hand the kids the $218 for the zoo?
Oh, without a doubt.
Or at the very least, step into the kitchen and bake the scones for them so they don't waste $16 worth of perfectly good ingredients.
It is absolutely faster. But rescuing them is a manifestation of that pyramid reflex we discussed earlier.
Oh, right.
It is our instinct to control the outcome to prevent messiness.
Yeah.
But when you do that, you rob the child or the employee of the only thing that actually matters.
Yeah.
The friction required to build capability.
It's like going to the gym and lifting the weights for someone else and then wondering why they aren't getting any stronger.
That is the perfect way to look at it. We could call it the agency muscle.
Agency muscle.
If you swoop in and give them the $218, your savior muscle gets a workout, but their agency muscle completely atrophies.
Wow.
The guide leans heavily into the concept of delayed gratification. This isn't about making kids wait just to punish them or make them suffer. It's about allowing the time necessary to build that muscle.
If an adult had stepped into that kitchen and fixed the salty dough for them, the kids would never have experienced the natural consequences of rushing, and they would have been entirely deprived of the psychological triumph of solving the problem themselves.
And the guide has a very strict, fascinating rule regarding money that ties into this.
Oh yeah, I wanted to bring this up.
It explicitly states that money is not a reward given to kids for being good.
Right. It shouldn't be an allowance handed out just for breathing air and existing in a house. Money is defined as a flow.
A flow. It naturally flows toward you when something useful is created and exchanged.
Value creation must precede consumption.
Exactly. The kids did not receive $300 because they passionately desired to look at reptiles.
No, they received money because thirsty pedestrians walking in the hot sun found immense value in cold lemonade.
And hungry neighbors found value in fresh scones.
It permanently wires the brain to understand that money is merely a trailing indicator, a signal that you successfully solved a problem for someone else.
And, the beauty of this framework is how context-independent it is. The guide emphasizes that you do not need a perfect, pristine suburban kitchen to teach the diamond cycle.
That's a great point.
If you live in a rural agricultural setting, maybe the project is figuring out how to plant maize or cultivate fruit trees.
If you are in a dense urban environment, maybe the task is navigating the public transit system to visit a free museum.
Even in an informal settlement, the project might be making and selling ice lollies with absolute minimal ingredients.
The limitations aren't roadblocks. The constraints are actually the features that make the system work.
The specific environment is entirely irrelevant. The only thing that matters is that the integrity of the cycle is maintained. Task, plan, get resources, do, assess, reflect, lessons character.
Right.
The constraint, whether it's sharing a single stove, dealing with bad weather, or only having $1 to your name, is the precise pressure required to force the get resources and plan stages to activate.
Because if you have infinite resources, you skip half the diamond.
Exactly. The facilitator's job is simply to hold that space, to stand back, suppress the pyramid reflex, and ask guiding questions like, what do we need to do first? Or why do we think that didn't work today? Without judging the answers.
So what does this all mean for us? It completely redefines accountability.
It really does.
Accountability isn't about punishment. It's not about an adult storming into the kitchen and yelling, "Why did you ruin the scones? Do you know how much butter costs?"
No. True accountability is calmly asking, what happened, why did it happen, and what specific variable are we going to change next time?
It is the difficult shift from demanding control to offering guidance.
And we have to recognize how incredibly difficult that shift is for adults.
Oh, it's so hard.
We are so deeply conditioned by our own hierarchical upbringing to direct and correct. Letting go of the outcome to protect the process requires immense discipline.
Because if we don't develop that discipline, we end up with a society full of people who possess encyclopedic knowledge but zero agency.
And that's dangerous.
As we wrap up today's deep dive, think about the era we are currently living in. We have technology and artificial intelligence that can hand us every fact, every mathematical formula, and every standard operating procedure instantly.
Yeah, you can ask a machine how to bake a scone and get a perfect, flawless recipe in half a second.
But an AI cannot give you human judgment.
No, it can't. It cannot give you the initiative to walk up to a scary neighbor and negotiate for lemons.
It cannot give you the emotional resilience to pivot when you accidentally ruin a batch of dough.
Those traits, relational intelligence, adaptability, grit, they only emerge from physically experiencing the full cycle of action, failure, and improvement in the real world.
The ultimate goal of education cannot merely be to raise knowledgeable encyclopedias. It has to be about raising capable, robust human beings who can self-organize, adapt to severe constraints, and contribute actual value to the world.
It's about teaching them how to cook instead of just giving them a tour of the pantry.
I love that. The source material ends with a beautiful, provocative thought that I want to leave you with to mull over.
Okay.
Becker writes, "There is no finishing. Every time you start again, there is always the thrill of just beginning."
Wow. Process thinking isn't a destination you arrive at. It is a continuous, lifelong loop.
So I want you to think about a current roadblock in your own life right now. Maybe it's a project at work that is stalling out, or a personal goal you can't seem to reach.
Are you failing because your ultimate goal is wrong? Or did you simply rush the process?
Right. Did you skip a step on your own internal diamond? Did you try to skip straight to do without spending enough time in timer?
Or did you forget to get your ingredients in order before you turned on the stove?
It's a critical diagnostic question whether you are trying to fund a trip to the zoo or launch a global company.
Absolutely.
Take a hard look at your own process, figure out which corner of the diamond needs your attention, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.